Hello, Yakri here with another Warframe video. This time I want to talk about the upcoming changes to Saryn that DE has recently previewed in a dev workshop and stream that they did. So the general idea with this rework isn't to completely change Saryn, but rather fix this kind of webwork of problems that she has with her playstyle being very confusing, inconsistent, and buggy. And they're kind of trying to keep a similar playstyle while making her abilities that aren't spores more useful, but also stripping out a lot of the bugs and inconsistencies. So to do that, what the big change that's being previewed is the idea of having spores not take not spread toxin procs anymore, and instead be infinite duration and have infinitely scaling damage. Instead, they have a damage meter, kind of like Nidus's stacks, right? And it can go up indefinitely. The more enemies, I think it's the more enemies that have the spores, or it might just be based on a static amount based on power strength, causes them to, the damage to scale up faster. And you can recast spores in order to pop all existing spores, and they deal double damage when you do that. So I think this is actually a really interesting change that they're proposing with Saryn. It's, I think, the only, like, on its own escalating damage thing that gives, like, proper damage scaling to an ability. I'm not familiar with any other just actual infinite duration abilities. It's a toggle, but it doesn't consume energy. It just keeps going forever. As long as enemies keep dying and you keep spreading spores. And the reason I want to focus on this a lot is because they've mentioned that this might not actually end up in the final version of her rework, and I really hope it does, because this is probably one of the more interesting and unique things I've seen in Warframe in a while, or even seen proposed. And I think we need more of this kind of unique flavor, especially to some of the older frames. I think a lot of newer frames like Nidus already have this, and older frames like Saryn or Nyx is a great example, don't all have this kind of unique flavor. Some of them do, but not all of them. So anyway, I think it's a really interesting change, and from what they showed in the stream, it's going to make Saryn effective in low-level missions, kind of like she is now, maybe a little less cheesy than her, just put up molt, put spores on it, and beat the crap out of it with a melee weapon strategy, but still very good. And she's going to be much stronger in higher level missions. Pretty similar to her effectiveness with toxic proc spreading, except that toxic proc spreading is, or has always been, very inconsistent and kind of irritating to pull off. And this is very reliable and works without any weird bugginess. It just, the spores spread, their damage goes up over time, it fixes a ton of issues. They also are changing the damage from viral to corrosive, and giving it a status chance of 50%, and you can get that status up to 100%. So this does mean basically she'll be better versus armored enemies. I don't know if I totally like this change. It's okay. That's a good way to put it. It's okay. It's good versus some of the toughest to kill enemies in the game, when you don't have corrosive projection around anyway, and it makes the ability maybe a little bit better. But it's not, I don't think it's actually too impactful, because you do run corrosive projection so often in high level missions that this doesn't give you that much increased utility. And it's maybe not even as fast as, armor stripping with frost or with mag. But it's good, right? Okay, it's still good. I can't complain about it, really. So I like that. It's all right, especially because they did move the viral proc to her ultimate, and so your ultimate is guaranteed viral proc now, and you only really need the one viral proc to get really high effectiveness out of it. So I think that's pretty fine. I just really hope that they actually go with this change. I know I realize there's probably going to be some ways you can this can be abused, but the infinite scaling spores, infinite duration with enemies spreading spores on death, really cool and very I don't know if I can't say very good quality of life, can I? It maintains the very good quality of life changes that Saryn got after her previous rework, and not including one of these two aspects, I think, would degrade the sort of fun factor of using the frame, right? It would add annoyance. Okay, let's move on to some of the other stuff in the changes. So Molt is finally getting the Rhino treatment of, it absorbs damage initially, and that increases its base HP, and then it'll take longer to kill, basically. I'm not sure it's, I would have preferred something like actual scaling with enemy level, like as if it was a Spectre or something, but this is all right, I guess. It's fine. It'll make it not get instantly deleted, which makes her regenerative Molt augment, which is already pretty good, very good instead, because it actually keeps scaling into high-level missions instead of your Molt getting deleted. Or, well, you could always hide the Molt before, right? But you really need the help of having some of the enemy aggro drawn off of you and having a heal at the same time. And in higher level missions, you couldn't really get the benefits of both because it would die so quickly. Toxic Lash, really good change, I think. It was weird having this like melee only buff, and now it's a buff that makes melee way better, and it also works with other things than melee, right? It works with your other weapons. So this is probably just a huge power boost to Saryn overall, and her like general usability. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to really say about that. The Contagion Cloud augment, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't decide to rework the augment while they were here, because Contagion Cloud augment is garbage, but I guess I shouldn't complain too much, right? And Miasma, I think I pretty much mentioned the really important thing on it. The base damage is increased, and it's probably going to do a lot more damage overall, I think. Maybe not. It doesn't have, I think it's losing some of the mechanics it got from her previous rework, right? Where you get bonus damage for having different like toxic and viral procs on enemies, and then of course viral inherently gives bonus damage, and instead it deals double damage with spores and deals double damage because of the effect of viral, which you could get some other way, but since viral procs for itself, it's kind of convenient in that way. So if that's replacing the previous multipliers it had, I don't think it's like stupidly good, but it's a little bit, I don't even know, not a little bit, like 30% better than it was before, which is enough that I think it's quite good instead of especially with the proc change, because now you have a reason to cast it, even if the damage isn't that great. Viral procking immediately every enemy in range is just such good utility. I've talked about viral procs before in a separate video, and this is just like such a good utility way to spread viral procs, kind of like Saryn's spores were before, that I think she's gaining utility overall, right? Because before she didn't have the corrosive, so she's got the corrosive on the spores, and in some cases that won't be super useful. However, she still has that utility of her viral proc spreading that she had before. In some ways, it's even better. And so I think that's just a buff overall, that kind of switch around. Okay, so overall, I think I really like the changes. If they keep them exactly where they are now in terms of functionality, I think this rework's going to be really good. If they're going to tone down the infinite duration spores and the infinite scaling damage, I hope it's only some sort of tweaks to the numbers and not a removal of the ability for enemies to spread spores on death, or the removal of the infinite duration, or the removal, or like putting a cap on the damage scaling. Any of those type of changes would really, it would be disappointing, I think, is a good way. I could kind of understand some of those changes from a game design perspective, but I don't think they would be as much fun. So, and I'm not sure I would agree that there's a good reason to handicap players to that extent in this kind of game where we have some really stupidly overpowered features, even compared to the idea of infinite damage scaling spores. I like, for example, I don't think this is going to make Saryn a better late game nuker than Equinox. It probably won't. So in that context, I think this is pretty reasonable. Unless they're planning on nerfing Equinox too. Hopefully not. All right, so I think that actually covers everything for Saryn's rework. It's a ton of content. I didn't mention Saryn's armor is going up. It's not by a lot, but it's by enough to make a small difference. Yeah, and I think it's a change she kind of needed. She doesn't get enough value out of steel fiber right now, and she's kind of a frame that's encouraged to get in situations where she's going to have to take damage, and that higher damage reduction is going to make regenerating Molt more valuable. And like combined with the fact that she has that Molt itself draws aggro off of you, it's kind of like it stacks with very well with your ways to recover HP and your other methods of damage mitigation by avoiding damage entirely. Just pushes back that point by which enemies are going to start one-shotting you and gets you more value out of steel fiber. So yeah, I think that's nice. Yeah, that covers everything for her. And probably the biggest thing that I would have to say that isn't obvious in this rework that I really like is that how she will work after this change, assuming everything goes through that's in this developer workshop, is much more intuitive and clear than how she works now, right? I think if a new player read these ability descriptions, they could easily just be like, all right, it's infinite scaling damage, like plague spreading ability, got it. Ability that draws enemy fire, got it. Ability that buffs my weapon damage, got it, no problem. And ultimate, which increases enemy damage taken and deals damage in AoE. Boom, easy peasy. And you know, all right, her 2, 3, and 4 weren't that much more confusing before, but there was like the whole hidden mechanic of you know, getting energy back from spores popped using Toxic Lash, and putting spores on Molt, and the like sort of crazy combo her ultimate had was more involved. It's like boosted its damage was more involved than it is now. And her 1 was super confusing. You know, it was buggy. You had to do the whole toxic procs on enemies, and then you have to do it in the right way, right? Where you can't kill the enemy. They have to be toxic procced, and then you put spores on them, and then they die, or you have time to pop the spores with a weapon, and that will actually spread the proc. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And this is much more clear-cut and gives her, I think, a similar power level to what she has now. Maybe better, because she will be more consistent. So yeah, I'm really excited. This is kind of getting to the kind of rework I wanted Saryn to have from, you know, 2015, 3 years ago when she originally got reworked. She was a big, you know, one of my favorite frame at the time, because I like playing AoE nuke caster types, and she got reworked, and I don't know, she had that whole plague spreader thing, but it wasn't really quite the same, and it was still, it didn't fix the issue that they said was the cause of the rework, right? They said, wow, you just click button 4 and you win. Well, then you clicked button 1 and you won. And I'm hoping that this seems like it's going to be a little bit more of her ability, each of her abilities being able to stand on its own better. Especially her 4, it looks like they put the damage up to the point where I think it's a little more usable. The fact that it has the viral proc gives you a solid reason, tactical reason to use it, and of course Toxic Lash working on non-melee weapons makes it a lot more, or useful in a lot more situations. It was useful before, but in a lot more situations it's going to be valuable. Okay, so that's it for this discussion. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more content like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe let me know, you know, what other kind of content you'd like to see from me and what I can do better. That's all for now. Yakri out.